everyone, and welcome back to the Adcast, a podcast for the study of modern visual culture. I am your distressed sea cucumber, Renu.
And I'm your all-purpose mugwort, Soup.
I'm laughing because I actually really hate sea cucumbers.
You asked to be the sea cucumber.
I know, because it was so funny in the anime. Anyway, this week AT stands for Agrarian Trials because we'll be talking about Barakamon. But before we get into that, what have we been up to?
That is a very good question. As always, let's see if I can sort of reach into the jumbled grab bag that is my memory, and see if I can just sort of rustle anything up,
just
anything
pluck
interesting up for you.
Yeah,
you know, it's like a big old bag with a bunch of stuff in it, and like reach in, pull it
understand.
out. Like, didn't work? No. Okay. All right, let's rustle around, and there's some more. I have I feel like I have not been up to too terribly much. However, I did want to bring this up specifically because I just need people to know about this.
Okay.
This is completely random, not about me at all. But the Chainsmokers, the musical group, the Chainsmokers,
yes,
has put out a I think they put out a new album or something. But one of their new songs uses a particular sample in like the very beginning, right? So if you look up the new Chainsmokers song, you can hear it. It's a voice line from Granblue Fantasy.
What?
Yeah.
Are they allowed to do that?
So I don't know. Okay, here's the thing: is that sampling in the music industry has always been a bit of a weird gray zone in terms of like legality, right? Because it is one of those things that is like, if you're putting something in a song as a sample, you're usually doing so in a creatively generative way, right? This is what we have like creative licenses for, right? Like changing stuff, and it's like the same reason that parodies are protected, I think, but I'm not sure is the thing, right?
Yeah, okay, so I just listened to it, and now I'm reading the comments, and someone's saying, as a native Japanese speaker, the intro's Japanese sample feels a little bit odd. It says in Japanese, "Go go Captain, keep it up, Captain." So basically, It's completely out of context. The fact that the line is from a popular Japanese social game makes it even funnier.
Yeah, so it is a sample of the character Clarice saying go do your best, Captain. And so in the game everybody calls you Dancho, right? They call you Captain because you're the captain of the airship, and because all games that have you as a main character require some way of referring to you that isn't your name, right? Because it would be really difficult otherwise and very resource intensive to try and accommodate all of those all of the name possibilities in voice acting specifically. But the way that most games get around this, especially in Japanese, it's much less weird in Japanese, I'll say, is you can just refer to somebody by their title, right? By what they do. This is why in Granblue Fantasy they call you Captain, and then in Arknights they call you Doctor, right? So yeah, like it's just like a weird little like slice of stuff that just like doesn't make any sense. Nobody knows how it ended up there. It probably got pulled into some kind of like big sound library, but like this is like an obscure line read from a popular character in Granblue Fantasy, but like it's not even like one of her catchphrases or anything, right? Like the person who was using this likely did not have any knowledge of what Granblue Fantasy was. They probably just found it in a sound bank somewhere and decided to use it because it sounded interesting.
This person is commenting saying, "This is tell me you play Granblue without telling me you play Granblue moment."
Right, exactly. And the thing is, like, I really don't know what the legality of doing so is, because I know that are songs that sample, things like movies, right? And I don't know what the legality of that is. And I'm sure it gets even weirder when you're pulling a sound clip, a voice read from a voice actor who doesn't live in your country, right? So the voice actress for Clarice in Granblue Fantasy is Ayane Sakura, who is a really well-known voice actor, but like, I wouldn't expect anybody in America to know who she is, right?
Yeah, I feel like because the copyright is across countries, right? Like they have different borders and everything, that it's harder to pursue copyright infringement in that case.
Well, yeah, it is exceedingly difficult to enforce any kind of copyright across borders, unless it is like straight up just like pirating stuff, in which case they're usually more on the ball about getting rid of it. But this is just like such a weird little slice of like modern existence of just there's just a Granblue Fantasy sample in the new Chainsmokers song.
I mean, maybe someone in the production or someone in the group
likes
Granblue. Like it could be a thing.
I would be so curious as to know how this ended up here. Like, because I'm like almost certain that the entire story is basically it got like just pulled into a sound bag. Somebody was just like fucking scraping the web for like sound clips that they could sell off in a library, and then somebody found it and figured, oh, this is like, yeah, this is cool. I can put this in my cool like indie music or whatever. But still.
Oh, okay. I there's a great Game Rant article about it.
Okay, all right.
It says, as revealed by Andrew Drew Taggart from the Chainsmokers on the duo's Discord server, the sample was discovered by music director Matt McGuire. According to Drew, the sample was found while the team was watching anime like Death Note and Food Wars. He also stated that it was the other member of the duo, Alexander Alex Paul, who made the call when it came to putting the sample into the song. But is it legal?
I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I just looked up the article. Yeah, let's see. The sample was found while the team was watching anime is like such a weird thing to say about a okay, like this is the thing, right? And this article mentions it, which is that it's from the Christmas variation of Clarice. It's not even from her like main version.
Yeah. That's so strange. It's so specific.
Wow, apparently the official Japanese Twitter account of Granblue Fantasy like acknowledged that.
Oh, okay.
They even encouraged fans to take a listen to the song and link to the official lyrics video. All right. I mean, I guess if it's not a problem for them, it's no
okay.
problemo,
Yeah, I mean, it could be that they sampled it with permission from Cygames, like they might have paid a fee, or they might have like shot them an email, been like, "Hey, can we do this?"
Maybe.
So,
it would be interesting.
Yeah.
That's just really funny.
That is so interesting. It just out of nowhere. That's so funny.
Yeah. So it actually quite reminds me of another thing that happened fairly recently, which is you remember the show Fire Force, right?
Yeah.
So Fire Force had its sound design done by David Productions, I'm pretty sure. Which you would know from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. They did JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, right? Yeah, okay, so David Production, they did the anime for JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Cells at Work, and Fire Force. And you'll know that they're pretty well regarded for their sound design, right? If you've ever watched JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, you know exactly what I'm talking about. All the sounds in that show are so like at this point they're so iconic that like everybody knows them, even if you don't watch JoJo's. Like the the Killer Queen like click sound, or the like Dio time stop, like the right. So the thing is, in Fire Force, one of the sounds that they use, that they sample, right? Talking about sampling, in their sound effects is the bruh meme. The meme that is just the guy saying bruh, bruh.
No.
Bruh. Like I'm going to send this to you, but like it's real.
Oh dear.
Like, if you listen closely, you can hear it, and then you'll never be able to unhear it.
But they use it so many times.
Like,
no!
if you had not been paying attention, I don't think you would have noticed
No,
this.
I wouldn't have.
But now that you have noticed it, you can't unnotice it, and suddenly it sounds fake.
No, now I have to listen for it, like everything I watch now.
Now you have to watch everything, and you have to like be careful, and you have to strain your ears just in case you hear a bruh sample.
Stop. That's so funny. Why not?
Honestly, why not? So anyway, that's all I've brought for you today from my bag of tricks. Two fun facts about the world of entertainment and production. There you go. What have you been up to?
Let's see. Well, I told you on our little Saturday Ace Attorney stream that I watched Eurovision, and that was a lot of fun.
Right, yeah, you were talking about your Eurovision stuff.
Yeah.
I remember being on Tumblr and Eurovision being like a big thing pretty much every year.
Yeah. It's still a big thing, and it was a lot of fun.
to be clear, Eurovision has always been a massive European thing. It's just that it started to take hold here because of the internet.
Yes, so if you are scrolling through Twitter and you hear a lot of upheaval over salads or wolves or bananas, it's because of Eurovision.
Of course. So those wacky Europeans.
Putting it out there, yeah. And it was very funny because, I mean, on the one hand, it's like Eurovision, at least I think maybe more so this year than previous years, because of course it's a thing in previous years too, was very pro LGBT rights and performances.
Of course.
Like very outrightly, like you know, LGBT positive. And there were also songs about being persecuted as an LGBT person, but it just, on the one hand, it's like, of course that's going to be a thing, but then also on the other hand, it felt a bit strange at an event where half of the performances were LGBT positive. Do you understand what I'm trying to like? It was just really, really interesting to see, because we live in a more conservative country and continent, I guess, overall.
Yeah, I mean, I am certain that it must be strange to see entertainment from another world, essentially, in which it is rather normal to be queer.
Right.
Instead of the weird hell country that we live in that is still actively trying to remove the right for gay people to get married again.
Right. I was like, wow, it's so normal in Europe, and then here it's just like it's just I mean, I'm sure there's still battles to be had in Europe too, but it's just that it's always like a huge issue here, along with women's rights and race issues and just all this. Anyway, it was a very positive experience, which Eurovision should be. So if you guys want something to just lighten up your life a bit.
it is quite interesting to take a glimpse into what it looks like when you pull together essentially a competition across an entire continent between a bunch of countries, and like they're just kind of there to have fun.
Yeah.
And they're not fucking worrying about all of the bullshit that we have to worry about. Don't get me wrong, obviously, European politics is a fucking nightmare.
Oh, yes.
I have no envy for that kind of stuff. I say from my glass house living in the United States. But, it's there are many things in Europe which are at the very least marginally better than they are here, and that's something that like you can quite easily learn to take for granted. As you can tell when you tell anybody about the United States, like from anyone from Europe, you can tell them about the United States. You're like, oh yeah, college costs this much. You got to pay for ambulances, and also they can bankrupt you. Because they cost this much amount of money, right? And people from Europe are just horrified. They're like, "Oh my god!" Like, it's incredible. They literally begin to treat you like you live in the Middle Ages, which, in all fairness, I think is pretty valid. It does feel like that sometimes. It feels like we're right back in, the time when we were burning witches and I don't know,
God,
peeing in chamber pots, right?
Yeah, our schools and our healthcare systems just bleed money.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be fair, the school system can't bleed money if it has no money to bleed.
Well, I guess I should say the school system, whatever money the school system has, gets sucked up into, the healthcare apocalypse that we have going on.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much everything is just a nightmare all the time. It's actually rather like quite apocalyptic when you really look at it from an outside perspective. Like people in other countries are out here like, yeah, I mean, capitalism like blows and we got climate change to worry about, and that's like pretty much a bummer. But also, you guys can't go to hospitals? Like, yeah.
It's just a continuous death spiral that just keeps getting deeper and more pervasive.
Yeah, I mean, we live in a very contentious time. But anyway, yeah, so Eurovision, that's a brief reprieve from the hellish
away from the death
existence
spiral. Yeah, you can watch
life.
Eurovision. Also, in my personal life, I've attempted to make onigiri for the first time as the weebdom calls.
Nice. I make onigiri all the time.
I love them.
I love onigiri as well, but I make them all the time because they are an excellent lunch food to pack.
They are. Yeah, I actually wanted like something light for breakfast actually, because I like something, I don't know, just like that size essentially. And I was like, onigiri sounds good, but I've never made them before. The ones I made, they're kind of chunky. They're a little they're not packed tightly enough, and so they're chunky and they're not very compactly formed, I should say.
Right.
But they taste good because I followed a recipe.
Yeah, I mean, it's like rice and some bits.
Right, exactly.
Like it's never gonna taste bad. In fact, like it would be rather difficult to make an onigiri taste bad because at that point, because at that point it's a problem. Like it's like a 1 to 2 ingredient food. At that point, it's because you're fundamentally missing like something in the production of the rice, probably, and at that point you should just buy a rice cooker. It will make your life easier.
Yeah, my onigiri were like, it's usually like a one-hand food. My onigiri were like a 1.5 hand food. They're not quite like two-handed, like a burger, but
one hand to eat, the other hand to catch whatever bits fall off.
Yes. When the top of the triangle falls off, you're like, oh!
Yeah. Onigiri are nice, and you can customize them to your liking.
Yes,
you can put whatever you like
that.
in them. Personally, I am a fan of just the umeboshi onigiri.
I want to try that. Yeah, I haven't been able to find any. I think I'll just have to like order some from online or something like that. I
think, if you don't have specifically like a Japanese grocery store anywhere near you, it can be very difficult to track down umeboshi. But like on the bright side, it fucking holds forever because it's a pickled food. So you could honestly just like order a giant jar online and just eat from it forever. Like we buy these little like tiny dinky containers, but like these things last for fucking ever. So I'm a fan of the umeboshi. I am a fan of the tuna mayo because
that's what I made. I made tuna mayo.
Yeah, tuna mayo is good. And then my other one, my secret like unlock character onigiri is the miso yaki onigiri. So this is like, you put some you mix some like sesame oil and like miso together, and then you like put it on the outside of the onigiri, and then you fry it in a pan.
That's what I made too.
Yeah.
We have the same taste in food.
That's like so Gucci, so good.
Yeah.
Like it is.
Yeah,
it's everything that you want. It's like crispy, crunchy. You got the savoriness from the sesame oil and the miso. Oh, delicious. Highly recommend yaki.
I highly recommend it. Just be careful because miso is salty, and it's kind of easy to like forget how salty it is. And so I made mine with like a little too much miso, but if you guys try it out there, just be careful about your miso, man. But otherwise, it's really, really, really good. Yeah.
Nice. Is there anything else that you've been up to?
That's about it.
All right then.
Yeah.
Cool. Do you want to talk about Barakamon? Speaking of food, because
speaking about moving away from terrible things happening in the world, this is a great series for that. Yeah, so Barakamon is originally a manga by Satsuki Yoshino, and it was later adapted into an anime by Kinema Citrus. And it basically, the premise of the story is that it's about this 23-year-old calligrapher named, his last name is Handa, and he is a very prominent figure within the calligraphy world, because he's continuously winning tournaments and awards and things like that. But at one particular exposition, he gets criticized by another prominent figure in the calligraphy world, like definitely someone who's way, way, way higher up in the food chain than Handa.
Of course.
And he clocks the guy in the face because he got criticized by this guy. The problem is that this guy, not only is he a really prominent figure, he's also an old man with a cane.
Yep.
And the opening scene of this anime is just Handa just laying into this old man for calling Handa's work boring. And I mean, essentially he kind of implies that Handa's like not fit essentially for this world, even though Handa's like basically dedicated his life to it. So he takes that very personally. And as a result, his father strongly encourages him, aka just basically makes him move out to an island and live out there for a while and just take a break. Get away from what you just did. And so the story picks up with him just adjusting to life on the island with all these villagers. It's very, very different, obviously, from the city life that he's known up until this point.
It's basically just Touch Grass, the manga.
Yes. It is about actually escaping from modern day society.
It's about actually touching grass.
Like he goes out into his yard and pulls weeds.
All right.
Yeah.
So, this is Well, I just want to start by talking about my experience rewatching Barakamon, because I think I have watched it. I believe I've watched Barakamon twice before.
Sure. Yeah.
So I watched it once, probably fairly close to when the original anime came out. Yeah, so the anime came out in 2014. And I probably watched it in like 2015, 16.
Right.
And then probably like 2 or so years later, in like 2017, 18, I think, I was showing some people Barakamon.
Yeah.
I rewatched it this year, in the year of our Lord 2022.
Yes.
And okay. So 8 years have passed since this anime came out.
Yes.
And quite a curious thing happened, which is the first time I watched this anime, I was like probably 17. Like 16, 17.
You are a different human being.
Right. And so I watched this about a 23-year-old, and I was like, oh, okay, cool.
Right.
I watched it this year as a 25-year-old, and I was floored. I was like, oh no.
Yes.
The passage of time is like withering me into a pillar of salt.
That is so funny because I was also around Handa's age when this anime came out. So it just comes around.
Yeah, man, I like listen, I liked it when I was that age, but now like at 25, it like kind of hits different. It's like fucked up. It's like really fucked up. Because like not only is it like I can relate to it more, it's like I can really see like from Handa's point of view a lot more, and I'm just like, oh, pain. You really do make some dumb mistakes when you're that age, huh, bud? So yeah, that was really interesting. Going back and watching something where I was, and this is the case for a lot of anime that I grew up with that I've gone back and rewatched in recent years. It's like when I watched it, I was probably like younger or about the same age as some of these like teenage characters, and now I'm like a grown ass person, and it's really fucking weird. You start to relate to the parents more, and you're like,
I know, it's definitely that feeling, right? When you go back and you watch an anime from your childhood, and you're like, oh my gosh, what the adults put up with.
Right? It's like, oh, these kids, man. And like, don't get me wrong, I completely get it. I still vividly remember being in middle and high school. I never, this I know. When I was growing up, I really like was not enthused about becoming an adult. I thought it would be kind of a bummer, and guess what? I was correct. Smug 16-year-old me was correct. Being an adult kind of blows. It's great in many ways, but it also kind of blows, right? So the thing is that I remember very specifically when I was in high school, I hated the way that adults treated me, and I really like resolved myself to like never really forget the perspective of when I was like a younger person.
Sure, right.
But it's also at the same time, I feel like I haven't quite forgotten what it's like to be that age. But at the same time, I now also understand what it must feel like to be the adults in that situation.
Yeah, but I think that's a great place to be, though, right? Because you can kind of you have a basic understanding of both sides, right? So if there is like a conflict, or if you have to interact with someone either younger or far older than you, you can kind of get where they're coming from. It's not just immediately like a...
I mean, obviously,
you're
obviously, I am aging into a withered sack of bones now.
Oh my god!
Anytime I have to interact with a child, I'm just like, oh my god, they're talking about cheeses and these nuts is back in fashion, I guess.
Stop.
It's like when you interact with somebody and they say like, oh, you mean like when they talk about something that you remember as being like kind of contemporary or whatever, and then they're like, oh, that old thing, right? You're like, it instantly ages you like 50 years, like. People nowadays are like actually talking about stuff that I grew up with like that, and it's like fucking weird. There's like, oh, you mean that old anime Madoka Magica? And I'm like, you're right, it's 10 years old.
It's not old. It just came out.
and it's bizarre because like you watch the process of people discovering this stuff.
Yes,
and like
yes.
I am certain, right, that my to your particular like micro generation, because I think you're far more squarely in the millennial bracket than I am, but I'm in the weird like in between like millennials and like Gen Z, and it's like whatever the fuck is happening here, but it's like incredibly bizarre because I definitely grew up and everybody was like talking about like Cowboy Bebop and stuff, right? And that kind of stuff is like remembered fondly as classics, but that stuff came out in like the 90s. At this point, that's like 30 years ago, right? So like that stuff is like fully ingrained as classics of the medium and of the genre.
Yeah.
But now there's this weird nostalgia for stuff that came out in the mid like 2000s, right? Where that was the stuff that I got into when I was starting to get into this stuff, right?
Yeah,
and that was stuff that was like airing then, right? Like
right.
We're like 1 or 2 years off of somebody rediscovering Sayonara Zetsubo Sensei.
Let's go.
Right? Like it's bizarre. It's a strange feeling, and watching Barakamon in the year of our Lord 2022 has only like amplified those feelings to me. It's quite strange. I will say another thing that I noticed when I rewatched it this time was that I noticed their accents so much more.
Yeah, right? It's cool.
I think it's and like obviously I don't know how accurate some of the performances are.
Oh, sure.
Right? Cuz I don't know anything about the Goto Islands,
Yes.
And I don't know what that accent is supposed to sound like, but it is at the very least clear to me that they're not speaking in like the standard Tokyo dialect,
right.
which was something that I was cognizant of when I watched it the first couple times, but I didn't feel it on a like an actual like instinctual level, right? Where I'm listening to the actual voice acting far more now than when I was younger.
Sure.
And yeah, that was really interesting.
I think they did a good job of basically trying to evoke the accent without going overboard, unless it was like for a specific gag or part of the story, like when they intentionally try to make it so that Honda can't understand them, kind of thing, or Honda is in a situation where he isn't supposed to understand because their accent is so thick. But otherwise, I think they do their best, because obviously we, as the viewers, need to understand what they're saying, and most people in Japan who are watching it probably aren't as familiar with the accent, or are way more familiar with, the Tokyo dialect.
Right, yeah.
And so they try to basically kind of make it so that it's not super strong, but understandable. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I can guarantee you that most of these people are not natives of
oh yeah
of the Goto Islands. They're not. They're most of them are actually probably like Tokyo born, as is the case. I mean, there's a lot of really recognizable voice actors here. Like the main character is fucking voiced by Daisuke Ono. And I will say it was really funny because like Daisuke Ono is like really really well known for playing Jotaro in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and that's like kind of the role that most people will gravitate towards when they think about Daisuke Ono. But like he's a really famous voice actor who has played a lot of really big roles. So people will remember him for whatever, but like all of the voice, because like his voice is like really deep, so all of the roles that he plays are like these incredibly manly masculine dudes, and it's so funny to kind of hear him play like a pathetic wimp, because you can kind of hear his like his vocal cords straining a little to just be like
yeah.
And it's extremely funny. It's an excellent performance.
Yes.
And it really, I think the voice acting is really stellar in this show specifically. Not only because they obviously try to work in the dialect and the accents, right? But also just because the performances are so vibrant, and they deliver exactly what they're meant to, and like it's just really funny. I would say that Daisuke Ono does a really, really good job here. but like all of the children are voiced by actual children, which is great.
Yes.
So they obviously, they do a fantastic job. They sound like children. A fun fact for you is that Rina Endo, who is the voice actress for Hina, the little crybaby child, is also the voice actress for the child in Sweetness and Lightning.
Yes, I was thinking because I watched Sweetness and Lightning after I watched Barakamon. I was like, I know that voice.
Right. I had to think when I listened to it because it's been a couple of years. Last time I watched Sweetness and Lightning was obviously for the podcast, and I had to remember if it was Hina or if it was Naru's voice actor.
Right,
but no, it's Hina's voice actor.
Yeah.
And what's extremely fucked up about this actually also is like obviously they were definitively children when they were cast for this role. But they're like 17 now.
I don't want to think about that.
Like, because like they were born in 2005, which is like that's a bonkers year for me to consider having anybody be born in. But even the fact that we're so far removed from that time is like kind of like really weird to me. Oh God, the impassable march of time. It truly cannot be stopped. But like, yeah, there's a lot of really famous voice actors here. Fumihiko Tachiki is here, the voice actor for Gendo. He plays the teacher.
Yes.
So
yeah, they have a really strong vocal performance for sure.
Yeah. So I would also say that so Barakamon has this really interesting kind of place where it is a slice of life gag comedy.
Yeah.
But it's like really grounded, and I think it is quite unique in that like a lot of it is like really funny and the gags are really funny. But they're also just like, they're not really out there at all, right? It's an extremely normal show, but it's played extremely, extremely funnily, right?
Yeah, I think I think that's probably one of the reasons why I probably like this type of slice of life comedy more than most. Is because there is something very grounded about the humor that doesn't feel forced. Like, it feels very natural, the way that it comes about, and the pacing isn't necessarily ruined by the humor. Like, if they were to, for example, try to build up the joke a little too much or like stretch out the joke for too long, like, it feels appropriately paced and the story can, progress rather than just lingering on the humorous moments for too long. Because I feel like that's what happens a lot with slice of life comedies that aren't done as, I guess, sharply.
Yeah. I mean, definitely it kind of is interesting because I feel like shows like Barakamon feel like they can be like kind of a dime a dozen. But actually Barakamon is like kind of stands by itself. I can't, when you distill it down, right? It's like a gag comedy about a struggling artist moving to a rural countryside and like becoming ingrained within the community there. Like, that sounds pretty normal, pretty average. And I can think of a lot of other stories that sound pretty similar to that. But just like the way that it is executed makes it feel so different from everything else. Like, when after you watch Barakamon, if you think of anything, if you try to think of anything that feels like it, it's really hard to actually.
Yeah, there is a really unique authenticity to this story that I find, like, more so than in others, and I feel like part of that is because the character cast feels like people I've met in the past. They feel like they feel like they are portrayed as like actual people, and so then you do feel the sense of community that they build up within the manga, and you do I love that it's told in the perspective of Handa, because you also are being introduced to this village, and so you kind of get slowly welcomed in by these very warm personalities, and you kind of get to slowly know the villagers as he gets to know the villagers. And so then there's a very natural humor by how they tease him for being a sensei or whatever of calligraphy, and how he's an ikemen and all these kinds of things. And he has city sensibilities, but he doesn't understand anything about, how to take it slow in the village life, and all this kind of stuff is really, I think it's really well done.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there is just like a lot of humor that comes from just the antics that the characters get up to, just the pure interaction between them, right? About just kind of how each character feels so like unique and realized, and the main character is kind of this like pathetic jackass, right? Like he's just he's like kind of wimpy. He goes with the flow a lot, not because like he wants to, but just because like he can't help but get swept up in things. He's really like he's really picky, and like he's like aggressive, and he like he wants everything to be perfect.
Yes,
but like
he's very
nothing,
prideful.
Right, he's very prideful. Nothing is ever perfect. Like it is extremely funny to watch the main character interact with the rest of the cast, because that energy is captured so well, and the sensibilities of the rural folks are just so far beyond him. And it's not like I would say that the thing is that a lot of the humor is not like pretty much none of the humor is like is ill-natured at all, right? At the end of the day, everybody's still laughing. It's not like this is like a look at these country hicks and like what their weird country sensibilities. It's that Handa is the weird one for not understanding, for being the fish out of water, right? They're just like, what do you mean, right? Like it's this, and he's just like, what? I don't understand what you're saying, right? Or when he like picks up the random packet of like things in the store, and then they're all needles, so he has to fucking help pick all of them up
with the magnet. Or the fact that he doesn't understand why no one locks their doors, and he also doesn't understand why the children somehow keep on getting inside his house,
doesn't know how they keep getting in.
He locks his doors.
And everything about it just feels so like natural, and everything kind of just flows and works. Like it has the exact pace that it needs to, and you feel yourself at the same time as Handa being drawn into this cast of characters and becoming essentially one member of this community, and it really does feel like that.
I was gonna say, what I also like about the cast, that I think separates this from other slice of life works, is that there is such a chaotic energy, especially with Naru taking the lead, that she kind of inspires, or she kind of draws out the chaos from Handa, and so he becomes a little crazier too, but he becomes more free as a person, and you end up like it's awesome. It's almost like a more likable side of him when he kind of like breaks out of his weird stringent personality, right? And I think that's what helps keep this slice of life from being, I don't know, I guess like too slow or too boring. Like it's slow when it needs to be, but it's also like quick and explosive when it needs to be too.
Yeah, I think that's what I really actually like about Barakamon, which is that it is one would think, when you think of something that is like artist takes a rural retreat to recover, right? Whether from like mental fatigue or whatever, it's always like this really slow, kind of beautiful pastoral story about like the beauty of nature, and like feeling like you're like you're healing as a result of the nature and the way that these people live. But it's quite different in Barakamon. It's a direct result of the people, to the point where when he gets to the airport and nobody's there to pick him up, and he finds Naru's grandpa driving a tractor, he's like, "You want to ride?" And he's like, "Sure." And he gets on, and he's like, he's looking at the ocean, and he's like, it's nothing special. It doesn't look that good. And he's just like, "Yep, that's the ocean." And then through the course of the show, he gets to know everybody in the village, and becomes a part of this community. He gets to know all the children. He's very popular with the children. Obviously, they just love to bother him, and he's just like, "Why, Wheeze?" And when he comes back at the end of the series, he takes a look at the ocean again. He's like, it looks good, it looks beautiful. And Naru's grandpa is just like, "What are you talking about? That's just the ocean."
What I love about that moment is they actually, in the manga, they have that all in one chapter, and it's really, really well done. Because the way that they do the storytelling through the paneling, for example, right, is usually the bigger panels show the bigger moments. And so you would expect, because I watched the anime before I read the manga, that the moment where he punched out the old man would be a huge moment. Like, it would be like a spread, right? That kind of thing. Because they show it. They like repeat slow-mo it in the anime.
It is actually so funny how they depict that moment in the anime.
It is so entertaining, and they do a great job. I don't hate the anime at all for doing this. It's a different approach than what the manga does. Is that the manga instead just has a different focus, right? The manga will it ended up only having like the top of the page show the punch, and then the rest of the page showing kind of like the reactions or whatever. But then the first full page spread after that is when he sees the ocean on the tractor, and he's coming into the village for the first time, so he sees the ocean, and it's pretty. And Honda has his reaction of, "Oh, it's not that great, like whatever." And the old man is saying that it's actually when that he's not I'm messing it up, sorry. That it's, of course, it's not going to look pretty right now because it's cloudy, right? And that it's when it's right now when he basically needs to see it the most, kind of impression. And so later on in the episode, after he's met some of the villagers and he's getting settled in, he ends up seeing the ocean again, and he sees it at sunset, and then that's when all of the beauty of the ocean kind of like hits him, and he realizes, "Oh, okay, I kind of understand what the old man was trying to tell me earlier, is that it's right now when I'm kind of lost and I don't know where I'm going that I really do need to see this kind of thing." Yeah. So I think it's really cool seeing. I think if you got our listeners out there want to experience this story, either the anime or the manga or both are really, really good adaptations of the story. They are different, and so, but they're equally engaging, and so it just depends on, I guess, the story format that you prefer. But I think they're different enough that you could get a good experience even if you experience both, that
right
kind of thing.
I mean, to be fair, I have never actually read the manga. I would like to at some point, but it's just I will say, having watched the anime, I think it would be pretty difficult to make a second season of it, just because like a lot of the cast has like aged out of being able to play those characters in many ways. But also just like Barakamon is just it's such a nice, like, well-contained one season, like, one core anime.
I agree.
Right?
Yeah, it doesn't need any more.
Yeah, it really just feels like a perfect little package, like a little bundle. It takes you on a journey through through 12 episodes, and you get pretty much exactly what you think you're going to get, right? It's really odd and chaotic, and there's stuff happening like all the time, and none of it is like meaningful at all. But like at the same time, it's like, you know, it like fixes Handa, right? It gives him some amount of life, and it draws some kind of inspiration to makes a kind of inspiration well up inside of him, which I think is, you know, really cool, because I think it is I think it's like interesting that the central sort of conflict of his, you know, personal development has a lot to do with being, you know, the perfect calligraphy boy and having the perfect contest calligraphy that has essentially been, you know, handed down to him by his father, right? And the process of him just kind of learning to do things for himself and being like a little more, you know, of putting a little more of himself into it, right? It makes for better art, and it also, you know, kind of frees him from these expectations. And I think, you know, we've talked a lot about how as an artist it is important to branch out of your specific field and experience different things, because they can bring a fresh perspective to your art. And this is like very true for Handa, but also at the same time, it is it's pretty indicative of like something that I've noticed a lot with the way that that I specifically engage with creating media, but I think a lot of people can relate to this, which is that I think sometimes people just like think too much about the things that they make, right?
Yeah.
They like they think about it so much that they end up like kind of like writing themselves into a corner with it, right? It becomes a point of contention that when you think about something that much, it can feel a little bit like stiff and prepared and lifeless, and it's important to kind of like tap back into, you know, your well of inspiration and, you know, be a little bit like looser with it, right? It feels like such a like stereotypical thing to say about art, like, oh, you know, like real art comes from the heart or whatever. But like I think like it's easier, I think it's simpler than that. I think like when you get too in your head about, you know, about what your art should be, I think a lot of times that comes from outside pressure, right?
Yeah, I love the way that they set it up for Handa, is that he is such an accomplished calligrapher, but it's actually precisely because he constantly makes works for tournaments and, you know, big art exhibitions and things like that, that his style has just become what other people might call like boring or textbook. It's really good, but it lacks any kind of unique personality behind it. And I love that right away, the first work that he creates while on the island is something that's completely chaotic. It just he completely like breaks out of the bounds of the actual paper that he's working on and just ends up like there's paper all over the place.
I have no idea how he gets all of the ink he splatters everywhere off of his walls. Every time I see it, I'm like, oh my god, that's never coming out. Like, you have to repaint that wall. It's such a weird adult concern. You're like, oh my god.
Yeah, and I think the whole tournament and the situation that he's in is very representative of the situation that a lot of creatives are in when they do work for money or for this and that kind of circumstance. You kind of lose sight of why you first started doing it in the first place, or what makes you passionate about it, right? Yeah.
I also think that there is a definite part of this that harkens back to just in general pastoral narratives and like what is valuable about them, right? Which is to say that a lot of the reason that people trend towards these pastoral stories is because the sort of the at least the mythos, right, of agriculture is that it is connected deeply to community, right? These agricultural like rural towns feel like everybody knows each other and everybody has known each other forever, right? And they're willing to help each other, right? That's a feeling that you don't really get in a big city, right? Like a big city like Tokyo, or even just like, a city that like you or I live in, where everyone has something that they're, looking to do all the time. Everybody has so many concerns, so many worries that life moves like just too fast for people, right? We were never meant to deal with life being this much all the time, right?
Right.
And like that's one thing which I think is really that stands out to me about Barakamon, which is that it's not just like genius calligrapher goes to rural place to get inspiration. It's that he's able to make that art because he's being supported by everybody from the community, right?
Yeah.
To the point where when he kind of grandstands a little bit, like, oh no, I'm sorry, this isn't my real piece. The real piece will be way better, and he fucking throws the barley tea on it, and you're like, what are you doing, man?
I know. Oh my god.
Because the piece looks great. You're like, oh, that's so good, and then and then the piece that he does come out with is the stone wall, right? It's the both an experience that he had in the Goto Islands in that community, and also like being the ledger of their names is like something that's like incredibly deeply meaningful to him and him alone. And like, he gets 5th place for it, right? But it doesn't matter because it's so like personal and it's so much art for him and not to win a contest, right?
Right, exactly. I love that that's the focus of this story too, is that when you become a full-time, artist or creative, of course that feels amazing and don't get me wrong, it's amazing when you get steady work and all that kind of stuff. But you can sometimes get to this point where, because you're trucking along and people love this very specific style that you do, a very specific thing that you do, you feel like even if your heart's not in it, you have to keep going with it because you're afraid that if you branch out and do other things, people will hate it and there's like a fear of failure, right? You'll lose everything that you gained up until that point. And so within this work, Honda does end up not placing first anymore in tournaments, and that crushes him, right? That's what he's used to. He's used to winning all the time. And with these new works that he likes more than his previous works, he's doing worse than what he did before. And so there's a very obvious debate of, is he doing the right thing, even though he's not being societally recognized as much for what he's making now? In a personal sense, it's far more satisfying. And so there's this constant duality, but then as he's developing his style more, as he's, building more bonds with the community, his style starts to really come into its own, and he's starting to slowly but surely, get better and better at it and be more recognized for it, like publicly, but more importantly, he's feeling more confident in himself. And I think that's about it. All I have to say about the work. It's really a very, I want to say, like, it's a strong piece of work, of a series. If you are someone who can identify with this kind of story, where it's about finding a personal meaning, a personal journey, someone who needs to form all these like connections with really wholesome characters, that kind of thing. It's a very relaxing story, but it has a lot of heart and meaning to it. There's also apparently a spin-off called Handa-kun, which is about the protagonists.
I'd actually heard about this.
Life.
Yeah, it's about Handa in high school, which also sounds pretty funny. Like, there's obviously that photograph of him with a bunch of his like I friends, I guess, question mark. I don't know. But yeah, I think for what I would say for Barakamon is it occupies this interesting place where it fits into a couple of pretty popular narratives about people finding themselves in in rural retreat, but more specifically kind of within the community in those places. I think a lot of times, what is missing from modern life, the crushing modern ills of capitalism, right, is that sense of community. And like, he wouldn't be able to succeed without the people supporting him, right? The village chief and his wife, bring him lunch every day, right?
Yeah.
Naru's grandpa brings him pickles, right?
Oh my god.
By the way, that was extremely funny, but also it was it made me really curious, and apparently there's a recipe for
there is a recipe in the manga. I screen capped it because I want to make them.
Yeah, so I'm planning on trying to make these as well.
Yes.
And if I do, I will give you an update in the next episode.
Do it. It's really simple recipe too.
Yeah, it's basically just like dried and then pickled daikon radish.
Mm-hmm.
Which is just interesting. I didn't think about drying them first.
Yeah.
But yeah. Pretty excited to try those. But they will probably be good. Like, Korean people already fucking love pickled radish. It's like okay. So the thing is, I work at a Korean fried chicken restaurant, right? And one of the sides that you can get is the pickled radish. I once watched a Korean a Korean person and I guess like her son or something come in, clearly from Korea, and they were probably just craving some food from home, right? They ordered some chicken, and then they ordered like 4 orders separately of like pickled radish, and they just went through all of them. It was amazing. I've never seen someone eat so much pickled radish.
They were really missing it.
Yeah, they were really serious about that stuff. But I mean, I understand. It's pretty good.
Either that or that's just a normal day for them.
That is also entirely possible. Yeah, some people just love pickles. I love pickles. Don't get me wrong. I love like any kind of pickle. But yeah, it's not just about like living a slower life and being away from the sort of like the pace of modern city living, so much as it is just about like finding things that matter, and finding people who care about you and who are willing to help you and support you, right?
Yep.
Yeah, honestly, like that might honestly be it. There are, I think, generally a lot of things that I could talk about in terms of like pastoralism, right? It's obviously a topic that I've brought up like now and again in the course of the many years of podcasting, talking about slice of life and specifically pastoral slice of life, and why that kind of stuff is so popular, why that kind of stuff pops up a lot in like isekai fiction. But to be honest, like I could sit here and I could talk to you about all of that. Or you could watch a video essay called "The Anime Countryside" by a creator named Hazel, who just sums it up. Like, I say sums it up. This video is like an hour and 17 minutes. So, but yeah, so she's responsible for making video essays about anime that I've been really enjoying. They take a really critical and historical lens to a lot of work in the early 2000s to like mid or the early 2000s to like the 2010s ish, right? Which is obviously like what we talked about, like that's the era of things that people are beginning to discover, right?
Yeah, you feel old.
I do. But yeah, if you want to know, if you want to hear more about about that kind of topic, then I highly recommend you go watch that video, because I've been enjoying this channel. I'm not sponsored or anything. That'd be weird. That'd be weird if a random YouTube channel just sponsored us to give them a shout out. I guess that's what the Patreon is for. But anyway, Yeah, so that's Barakamon. And I guess we'll just keep it short and sweet. Have a little breathing room. You know, this is your homework for the next month, which is just to take a little breather to yourself, find a little inspiration here and there, and you know what? If it doesn't come, it doesn't come. It's how it is.
Yeah, branch out a bit from your daily routine.
Yeah, find something to care about. All right, well. Who are you? Where can we find you on the internet?
Hey, I am Renu, also known as Swan. You can find me on Instagram at swan.drawn. You can find me on Twitch and Twitter and Tumblr and Facebook, all that kind of stuff, at swan.drawn. I have reached floor 96 out of 100 in the Bloody Palace in DMC5.
Wow. So when you say this, do you mean that you have reached it and have like dropped a save down there, or do you mean like that's the highest that you're?
That's the highest.
Okay.
Yes. And that's the thing is that like once you get down to the lower levels, each time you attempt it, it takes like 2 hours or so. So it's been. But we've been making progress every stream. So I've kind of reached a point where I I need to practice, get better at the game a bit more before I can feel confident that I'll be able to advance further in the challenge. But I'm 4 levels away, dude.
You know what? Yeah, you made it. You made it 4 levels away from the end. TBH, if I got that far and I fucking beefed it, I would just give up. There's no way. I don't think I have the mental tenacity to manage that.
I'm so determined though, because it's like it was like being gradually overwhelmed rather than being steamrolled, right? If I was steamrolled, I'd feel pretty discouraged, but it's like it's definitely doable. So
I guess that's fair.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think when I was younger, I was pretty decent at just kind of brute force trying something until I got it. But nowadays, it's really hard for me to do that. The only time I really do it is when I'm playing like From Software games like Dark Souls.
Oh, sure, yeah.
That's the most like I have felt like I need to do like a sort of like Sisyphean trial of just like pushing the boulder up the hill over and over and over again. But yeah, all right. You're almost there. I believe in you.
The boulder's almost there, Soupy. I'm making progress.
in the words of Clarice Granblue Fantasy, Ike Don Cho, Gambare Gambare Don Cho.
Yeah.
Almost there.
Yeah, what about you?
You can find me all the places at Literal Soup. Every weekend, I do 2 weekend streams. One on Saturday, which is the Ace Attorney stream with Renu. We are almost... I think we're like halfway through Game 2 of the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles.
Whoa.
At least I think so. Generally,
are we?
I think there's generally like 4 or 5 cases per game, and we're on case... Like we just finished case 2, so I think that puts us at about the halfway mark.
I feel like we're just getting started in terms of like progression in the plot line.
I guess
know?
I guess that's true. I suspect that the next one is gonna chunk us some story progress.
Okay. Yeah. Please.
And then on Sunday I do a tier list stream where we rank D&D 5th edition subclass is in a tier list, and that's been going pretty well. We, and this is going to date this episode. We just finished Rogues, and we're going to move on to Sorcerers. And so yeah, we're chugging along. We're trying to get through it. I think Sorcerers will probably have to be a 2-parter because there's so many of them, and I think they're going to be pretty janky. But yeah, that's a lot of fun. Obviously, I've been saying this for the last like bajillion episodes. I would like to start streaming again. It just can be kind of hard to find a time to, just because I don't want to be streaming when Gwen is asleep. We just moved into the office together because we have another one of our friends who moved into the now vacant room. I say vacant; it's already full of his stuff, right? we spent all of this weekend moving it, and yeah, I don't know. It's just not really feasible for me to like start streaming like 9 p.m. and go for like 3 hours like I used to. But yeah, maybe one day. I don't know. It's weird. My schedule's getting like weirder. It's not even getting like busier per se. It's just getting weirder. But yeah, I will be doing those, and that's like primarily where you'll be able to find me. And I suppose on that note, let's wrap up, shall we?
Woo!
Okay, well, our opening is by Scotty Network, and our ending is by Takumakata. And the patrons we are thanking this episode are Evan Williams, Magpie Merites, Claire, Frostfall, Shandao, Cherubel, and Dylan Boats. Thank you so much for the support.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
On that note, I think I believe that the person behind Scott 2 Network just dropped some more music, so you should definitely check that out.
Woo!
Yeah, they're pretty rad, I gotta say. All right, well, that was a short and sweet episode. I feel like we definitely could have tangented for longer, but I also kind of like when we can keep around the 1 hour mark.
Yeah.
Just feels very podcast like, doesn't it, to have like a 1 hour episode? Yep. Even though every single time we do a wrap up episode, it's like 2.5 hours. Oh boy. Anyway, we got some more stuff in the pipeline. We got some stuff planned, and I think that June is going to be quite an exciting month for the Absolute Territory podcast, which is a really ominous thing to say now that I say it like that. But anyway, we will see you next time.
See you next time.
また明日ね。